We are live. Sorry, we were having technical difficulties because, what would a live be without that?
Hey everybody, yeah, after some technical difficulties, I think we're finally up and running.
Okay, let's get to where we can see comments though. Um, there it is. Okay, guys, we're learning. Okay, we're fishermen. We're not influencers. So, give us a break here. So we just posted the new Pro Rainbow tube jigs. We haven't even had a discussion, and I noticed that two people have already ordered them. So thank you. That was very, very nice.
Yeah, thank you.
Um, so we're gonna just jump right into it because we know you guys are busy and you have a lot going on right now. So hi, Angela. It's so good to see you.
Yeah, thanks for joining in.
So we're gonna just kick it off. So the first thing we're gonna discuss kind of like the purpose of the Pro Rainbow. It's not just another color. There is there's a purpose behind it. If you guys haven't seen, we posted a post about how it looks so much like a rainbow trout, and that was the ultimate goal. And then we also posted that our guide team has been testing it and testing it and testing it this winter, and Kyle Jones being the leader of that, and they've been crushing it. So we're going to talk about the purpose behind it, and then we're going to talk about ways to use it. Hey, Reed.
What's up, Reed? Oh, hey, so Reed is with Send It Outdoor, so he is
Yay!
partially responsible for this thing as well. So thanks for joining us, Reed.
So we're going to talk about ways that you can use it from the shoreline, vertical jigging, trolling, all the different ways that you can use it. And there are different techniques that we're going to talk about that make it more effective.
So yeah, I guess I like talking about the technical parts of all this stuff. So, um, one of the things that we really focus on when we get into a couple of these collaborations or when we build our own plastics is we're not in the market to sell people stuff. We're in the market to catch fish better. And so, sometimes you might look at the colors like on the shelf or whatever and you're like, "Oh, those are kind of like meh or kind of muted or whatever." But what we were going for with this Pro Rainbow is what we call a translucent color. So it's hard to tell, like, I'm holding one here, obviously, but it's a little hard to tell when you're inside. But this thing is crazy. It's like see through. And when you get it out into the sunlight, when you put it in the water, when there's a lot of water, like sunlight on the water, this is where this color really shows its true self. And it almost morphs into different shades. Like you'll
Mm-hmm.
see some of the pictures that we posted where you see it in a fish's mouth. Like in that setting, the back of it almost looks brown, and that's like it's a mixture of that light pink and olive with the copper flake and stuff. Makes it almost chameleon like, where it changes into different colors depending on the light. And so the reason that's important is we're targeting clear water fish with very excellent vision. And so we want to fool them into thinking it is something they want to eat. And so, especially in bright light conditions, in clear water with fish that can see, you can't give them something to look at that's bold because they will pick it apart and they will say no.
Mm-hmm.
And so, a lot of these, custom colors that we like to have built are incredibly natural because that is the easiest way to fool a fish is to make them think about it just enough that they have to investigate it with their mouth because they're just not sure that it's not real. Where in a lot of other cases they can get, they can be, right up on it and get a good look at it and be like, well, that doesn't look right. So anyway, so that I was gonna put a flashlight behind it and we kind of messed around with that. But anyways, this thing is like it's very see-through and it changes to like three or four different colors depending on how the light shines through it. So that was a lot of the effect that we were going for with this thing. So
And and when you see this thing in the package, like, let's face it, it's not the flashiest, sexiest tube you've ever seen, because it's supposed to match the prey. It's not supposed to catch fishermen, it's supposed to catch fish. There are thousands of tube jig colors on the market, and what's one more? But these, we really dialed in, like, what does their prey look like, and how can we replicate that?
and so with that said, at the same time, like this is not the only tube jig you need in your box. Like this particular color answers questions during certain, times of the year, during certain light conditions. It's just another tool in your box. Like Stormy said, there's thousands of colors on the market already, but in these very specific scenarios, none of them were quite as effective as what we wanted to them to be. And so we wanted to come up with something that you never catch every fish that looks at it, but this winter it was catching fish for our team that literally would not bite anything else.
Mm-hmm.
So
Looks like Matt's here and Scott's here. Thank you guys. Thanks for joining with us.
yeah, thank you.
So that covers the why. You guys understand it was designed specifically to match rainbow trout that predators feed on: pike, lake trout, even brown trout. That's what it's designed to do. It is designed to mimic their natural prey. So now let's talk about Matt's excited to fish it himself.
Yeah.
You killed it, Matt. You guys did awesome. So let's talk about how we're going to use it. And this is like how you can use it to your advantage. If you're fishing from the shoreline, if you're fishing from a watercraft, and then in a watercraft, are you vertically jigging it or are you trolling it? How are you fishing it in those scenarios? So Andy's going to cover watercrafts and I'm going to cover shoreline.
So as we're still in ice fishing season locally, but there's a lot of waters that are thawed out or very close to it. So there's going to be a lot of opportunity left for ice, but open water's coming quickly. So obviously when you're ice fishing, you're vertical jigging. That's your option. And so when we're wanting to straight drop down stuff, of course it's our 860 heavy wire tube jig head, like the level head type heads that we use with this thing. And that was, throughout the entire winter, the 1 ounce 860 heavy wire was pretty much the go-to deal. So we have a billion videos on how to rig these things, but it's like super simple. And there's one more thing I want to point out about send it tubes in general. So a lot of other tubes on the market, the bait's poured as a tube solid, and then you got to cut the tails, right? These particular ones, the way their molds are built, the tentacles are actually individually poured out. And so what that does is in this particular case, like these things can individually move very freely without being kind of like a jumbled, tangled up mess, which you get with the cut-tailed ones. There's a time and a place for both. And so for me, when I'm fishing, especially open water, I kind of want this thing to kind of flow and move without getting like kind of scraggly and messed up looking. So the bigger send it tubes, that's one of the things that sets theirs apart from others, is just how the tails are poured instead of cut. And I think it helps the overall flow of the tube better, especially when it's moving through the water column. When you're resting it on the bottom, sometimes you want those finer cut tails because they're a little bit more frilly and they move a little easier without as much movement of your rod. So like I say, there's a time and a place for both. But with that said, when you're vertical fishing, again, I guess I got to that because it makes it easier to rig too. You just swing over the tentacles from the back and open it up, and the head goes right inside like that. And then it's super easy to, you don't have like this like mess back here that you're kind of trying to straighten out. Like it just lays in there and you're done. So that's super helpful.
And we should mention, like, when you're rigging it, the tube is designed to mimic a rainbow trout. So,
Yep.
how do rainbow trout look? They're green on the back, brown on the back, and pink on the sides and the belly.
Yep. So that pretty much goes for any two-tone tube color that you're using. If you want it to look like the prey that it's designed to look like, the lighter color goes on the bottom, the darker color goes on the top. So that's how to properly rig it where it actually looks like a rainbow trout. So again, when we're vertical fishing, one of our big keys, and that's kind of why this head style works so good, is you want this tube to sit in the water column horizontal, not nose down or nose up. Like the flatter you can get it, the more natural it looks. Mm-hmm. And so, one of the keys for us this winter with this bait, when we're talking about mimicking rainbow trout, is rainbow trout are rarely on the bottom of the lake. They actually are almost always suspended. And so, or at least in the upper 20 feet of the water column. So unless you're fishing 30 feet or less, we're actually using this bait out in much deeper water and suspending it in the water column where we're seeing rainbows swim through, because at the same time, the predator fish are also looking up in that part of the water column looking for their prey. So that's why, obviously rigging it with the light side down and the dark side up, when a fish is looking at it from the bottom, that looks like a rainbow trout's belly, like he's used to seeing. So that like automatically gets him fooled enough to at least swim up there and check it out. And as we're talking like techniques a little bit for how we caught a lot of fish this winter with that thing, was we call it the chase technique, where you get that thing suspended in the water column, a fish sees it, he's like committed to come look at it, and like a natural rainbow trout would, immediately that fish senses danger and starts swimming away. And so you do the same thing, you just pull that bait away from that fish. And a lot of times you'll see them on your sonar, kick it into high gear and chase it down and eat it. And not even, you don't give them enough time to really think about it. Mm-hmm. You just really trigger their, prey or predator instinct to like chase it down and get it. So.
And that is the same if you're fishing open water and vertically jigging for them.
So the other thing actually that we really like about this, the way this color turned out, is when this thing, and you'll see in some of those pictures, when you see it from the top down, especially when it's on the bottom of the lake, is that whole thing almost turns brown. And it's like a mix of just the see-through and then it's shining through the green to the pink and then showing the copper. So it like say it's kind of camouflage or chameleon. And that's a question we get in general about any kind of jig fishing, is what color do you pick, especially like in bass fishing. Mm-hmm. Is like I'll go up to a dock or the boat ramp or something and I'll just throw my jig around there. And the first jig that I throw out there, that as soon as it hits the bottom of the lake, I can't see it anymore, that's the one I throw. And so the way this thing kind of color shifts in the water sort of hides it when it gets on the bottom. And that was kind of that wasn't necessarily intentional with the color that we were going for, but that's been a very surprising side effect that's actually been crazy effective, because it makes those fish hunt for it. They see you pop it off the bottom a couple times and stir up the mud a little bit. So they kind of like when it's suspended, they see that motion and they see that little subtle color, and so they come in to investigate. And when they can't see it and pinpoint it, but you keep moving it, they know it's there. They know it must be natural because they don't see something out of place, and so they got to investigate it with their mouth. And so those are kind of the two scenarios in a vertical jigging sense where we saw, especially ice fishing, the most success. So
Are you guys following with us? Everyone got really quiet, so I just want to make sure. Are we good? Everyone good?
So,
Looks like a few people are pretty excited for open water.
heck yeah.
I can't wait. I can't wait for
Yep,
open water.
we're ready.
So let us know you guys are still with us, that you guys can hear us. Put something in the comments. But oh yeah, Reed, thank you so much. Okay, so is that everything you want to cover with vertical jigging?
That's pretty much the nuts and bolts of that. So,
And if you guys have any specific questions about the style of fishing, let us know. You guys can put them in the comments and we'll answer them. So let's talk about trolling.
yeah, so as you saw with our team last year, and Jesse and Angela got super into this. The trolling is another really effective game on this lake, especially, and this tube's gonna play right into that at the same time. So our plan, I have a separate rigging video for how to rig this stuff while trolling, and so we'll put a link to that in the comments later. But so we do have a video on how we rig it for that. It's a little bit hard to show right here, so but yeah, in the same exact sense, like this, like where this thing's gonna play in the trolling game is when we see those suspended fish and pups, especially, that get up in the water column and chase around a lot of different stuff. This color pattern's going to play big time with those fish, because that's the prey that they're looking for. So, and I'm gonna like put Matt on the hot seat like right now, because I texted him earlier just to confirm that we probably could get the 6.5-inch version. So we'll wait and see what he says about that. But having one size bigger, especially for like Flaming Gorge and some of these reservoirs where bigger baits are kind of king, this will fit right into that whole thing at the same time. So
Thank you all for letting us know you can hear us. We really appreciate it. So how are you going to troll it? Where are you going to troll it? What are you going to do?
So it depends.
That's not helpful.
I'm gonna troll it at Blue Mesa. And,
oh, thank you, Matt.
Thanks, Matt.
First batch of 6.5s. 6.5s will be made this evening. That's so exciting.
Heck yeah, people loving that already. So, yeah. So the way we got into this like 3 years ago was, either big Dodgers or big flashers, and then trailing tube jigs behind them is kind of what we're doing. So you create that visual effect and draw those predators in, and then the tube or whatever bait you're trailing behind there is obviously very key in getting them to commit and bite. And so that's kind of our general style, is we're trolling like pretty big gear. And like with a tube jig, that's kind of what you have to do, so you can have that gear that it's behind create the call-in effect, as well as the little bit of motion that it puts into that tube to make it look super lifelike at the same time.
So big Dodgers, big wow, I'm drawing a blank.
Cowbells,
Thank you.
Yeah. So
and then a leader.
Yep. And a leader
tube.
Treble hook. So it's like a line through weightless rig with a treble hook that the treble hook actually kind of rests right where the tentacles meet the solid body, is kind of where the hook's right in the middle of the bait, just like it would be with a regular tube jig head, which is kind of where you want that hook, kind of right in the center. But yeah, we'll link that video on that rigging of those as well.
How far behind the Dodger do you run these?
Good question, Corey. So how far behind a Dodger do you run those? A lot of it depends on speed, because sometimes you want the lure to have a little bit of motion, but not too much. Like, I think we probably actually had better success with it with smaller amounts of motion. So like if it's behind a big Dodger, it's going to swing it and kick it around a bunch, which actually works really good for pups and browns. More motion the better. But if you're kind of trophy hunting, they kind of want it they want it toned down quite a bit. So you would simply just put a longer leader in there so that it doesn't move around nearly as much. So that is something you got to kind of play around with, but that could be anywhere from 14 inches to 36 inches depending on your speed and what kind of motion you want.
Okay, so again, we will link the comment on how we will link the video in the comments on how Andy rigs his weightless tubes. I love how durable. I know this is, I seriously mean this. This tube is so durable. It works so well. So you're going to be able to use this for a long time. Unless some lake trout just absolutely annihilates it. I love how, I mean, these are tough. There's some tubes out there that just are not tough, and these are. I really, really love that.
Yeah, we had really good success last year on the watermelon colored Send It 5-inch, and I think the one I was running, I think I finally had to chuck it after like fish number 12 or 13. Like those things hold up to serious abuse, which is important.
Yeah. So we will link that in the comments. And then I want to talk about shoreline fishing. A lot of people don't have boats, and they don't have paddleboards, kayaks, any kind of watercraft, or you're like me, I just prefer to fish from the shoreline. I really love it. I love covering ground. I'm not a huge fan of the boat. I will go because I love my husband, but it's just not my preferred method of fishing. So again, if I'm fishing from the shoreline, I want this thing to mimic the prey, right? So I want it to mimic a rainbow. Obviously, I'm casting it on a jig, so I'm going to pick a light jig. The lightest jig we have, and I'm going to rig it so that the buoyancy of the rubber helps keep that jig up in the water column rather than resting on the ground. So I'm going to cast it out on my medium heavy rod, and I am going to wait 1, 2, 3 seconds, just quick count, and then I'm going to start reeling. I'm going to start popping my rod, and I'm going to reel super quick, and that'll kind of like hop it through. I keep going the wrong direction. It's going to hop it through the water column. Another way is just casting it out and start reeling, because rainbows skim the surface all the time. You'll see it when you're trolling. They are near the surface all the time. So another way is just casting it out. Ooh, Dale's here from Wisconsin.
Awesome.
But casting it out, straight line, and then just start retrieving it. You don't want it to sink too far down. So again, super light jig head, and keep that thing near the top, whether by popping it or fast reeling it, and you're going to mimic a rainbow trout just cruising through the water. And you would not believe how many of those big lake trout are near the surface. I missed a huge one year, and it was just skimming the surface. So that is how I'm going to fish it from the shoreline. I'm going to walk, I'm going to cover ground. I'm probably going to fish way on the like deeper points and things like that rather than the flats. But that's how I'm going to fish it from the shoreline. So keep it moving, keep it up off the bottom.
I like it. And yeah, like say with the fit, like this being a 5-inch tube, it's like, that our 860 heavy wire is, that's the weapon of choice to rig into this thing. And you can tell like that's a pretty burly hook on this thing. And so as Stormy mentioned, she likes to throw that on a medium heavy. You need a little bit more power just because you're using a little bit more powerful hook. And so that when we talk about rod selection, that's oftentimes what we look at when we're picking the power of our rod. Not necessarily the size of the fish, but how big of a hook do we need to control and set properly. The beefier, bigger around the hook, the more powerful rod that you need.
Yeah.
So, and then I guess to finish that off, usually we're running 10 or 12 pound fluorocarbon line. And obviously we like to run braid with a leader. And so in a case where we're casting actively for big fish, we're usually running 20 pound braid with that 10 or 12 pound leader of fluorocarbon. And our leader length is very long because we do want to keep that visible braid far away from the fish's eyes at the same time. So a lot of times we're running like 15 or 20-foot leaders. So
Yeah.
hopefully that makes sense.
And you don't have to have a watercraft to catch big lake trout. You don't have to. You can do it from the shoreline. People do it every single year. It's just getting in the right spot of where they could possibly be and keep trying, keep moving, keep covering water. I think it's phenomenal how many people think you can't catch them from the shore, but you absolutely can. We were talking about it, and all of my, well, I say it is, but anyways, all of my personal best fish have been caught from the shoreline. So you can absolutely do it. Matt from Sunday is asking, what's your favorite pro cure for Lakers?
So yeah, we go over that, and we can mention that real quick too. That on our website we have those couple of tube jig classes that we've done. If you guys have questions, we like super deep dive into all the different ways to rig tube jigs and different head styles and how to utilize each head style for what you're doing, and we get crazy about that. And one of the things that we talk about in there that actually is an aid in rigging tubes is using scent. And Procure is kind of our go-to brand for that stuff, just because they have such a wide variety of stuff, and it's all natural, and it seems like we're colors, the more natural you get, the better. So to answer your question, usually the first scent that I go to for lake trout fishing is the one Procure makes called Predator. And then the other one that it doesn't make any sense, but the garlic bloody tuna one, which is actually a very popular kokanee salmon scent for some reason. For like pup lake trout, it seems like garlic stuff catches those things really good for some reason. So I don't know if it's more the garlic like masks the scent of everything else, like if I had gas on my hands, or it masks all those sort of smells better than anything, or if it literally they really like garlic smelling stuff. But anyways, that garlic bloody tuna is a good one, but my go-to one is Predator.
Okay, so we want to give away a package of these. And so if you're here, tell us what town you're here from or state, and we're going to pick one or two of you guys, and we're going to give you a package of these baits and a package of 860 GSO heads to go with them. So put in the comments where you're here from, and if you have any questions, that counts too.
Yeah.
Because we want to know.
That's kind of the rundown of the why and the how on this thing, and so we would actually at this point love to answer any more questions that you guys have, but we'll kind of keep monitoring this too. So if you come up with something, DM us a question or whatever, and we'll love to answer your questions. So
Yeah. Oh, Mark's here. Mark, I'm sure you're ready for open water.
heck yeah.
From Grand Junction, Colorado Springs, Scott, Corey from Denver, Angela from Montrose, Jesse from Montrose. Okay, so let's pick a couple people here.
So I think Jordan Butler is going to get some of these because I want to see you go to Vallecito and catch a pike and a smallmouth on these things, because I know these things would crush it on that lake.
So if you will email us at info@gsofishing.com and tell us that you are a winner from the live, we will get that shipped out to you. Just send us your shipping address and we'll get that out in the mail. I am going to pick Zach Wilkerson from Commerce City, Colorado. If you will also email us at info@gsofishing, we will get your tubes sent out to you. If you guys ever have any questions, we're always happy to answer them. It's Andy and I in the DMs. So if you are asking us, it's either him or I responding. Scott has a great question for you.
So Scott wants to know when there's going to be a 1/2 or 3/4 ounce 60 degree, and um, it's funny you asked because actually last fall, like that, when Stormy caught her big lake trout from the bank, that was on a 3.5 inch tube with a 60 degree head. But that same day, I was actually prototyping 60 degree heads, and I was throwing this tube on a 60 degree head that we're trying to prototype to get the right hook and the right um, I guess the right balance on the different styles of jig heads that are around for that 60 degree hook. And so I caught a pretty big brown that day, like a 5 or 6 pound brown that day on this tube with one of my prototype 60 degree. That particular one was a 1/2 ounce head, but that is absolutely in the back of my mind and something that we're working on. But as you can imagine, we have a lot of irons in the fire, so I'm not sure if that it's not going to be ready like super soon, but it's something that I'm building, and I would be happy to send you a couple of them to try out yourself if you have a use for those. So
Yeah, we're always into product testing. Which tube did you say would crush the smallmouth?
So yeah, Dale, we're talking about this new 5 inch one that we just got built from Send It. And where Jordan lives, they have a lake that has big smallmouth in it and northern pike in it, and of course, like every body of water in Colorado has full of rainbow trout, and so those two predators are eating rainbows, and so in certain fisheries, when you're especially trophy hunting, matching bigger prey like that is kind of the deal. But for where you are, you'd probably be looking more at like the 2.5 inch. Like Send It makes some really good 2.5 inch tubes, and then in their 4 inch tubes too, they make one called Watermelon that is an absolute smallmouth crushing color from them. Yes.
Hey, Chantel's here.
Hey.
Okay, so Jesse said, if fishing for bass or pike with these, are you fishing the same way, swimming or bouncing the bottom? That is a great question.
Yeah, great question. So, usually this was a funny story from like 100 years ago when we were fishing Crawford, and Stormy had a tube jig on, and we were drifting down the bank, and she was just had that thing dropped over the side of the boat and was just continually hopping it along the speed that we were going and hung into a big pike on that lake. Just basically just drifting, but keeping the tube on the bottom.
I was lazy fishing, let's be honest. I was being super lazy, and it worked spectacularely.
Yeah, so that technique obviously works really well. And it just depends. If you're covering a big flat, like if you're at Taylor Reservoir and you're casting around in those 3-4 foot flats above the grass, then you want a light jig head, and I would fish it just like a swim bait. Like a tube jig actually is a highly effective replacement for a swim bait because it's more subtle. Sometimes the roll or the kick that you get with certain swim baits make fish shy off of them for whatever reason. It seems like because it's like a more precise looking bait, so when it's not the same as what they're used to eating prey wise, if it doesn't move exactly the same, then they won't bite it. And so a tube is so much more subtle that we think about it as basically just a super finesse swim bait. So yeah, good question. So you can fish it both ways, absolutely. But depending on, like to the same point in Taylor, like it has so much grass that it's kind of frustrating at times to fish it on the bottom, or those fish are so shallow that you can't fish it that way very effectively without spooking them off. So we just chuck it and wind it in that case.
Yep. Okay. Well, thank you guys. Thank you everyone for being here with us. We are trying so hard to get on live more and post more videos. It's hard. We're a family of 6, and it's hard to get this quiet in this house. You guys have no idea. Everyone's just hiding. So thank you so much for being with us. You can get our Mastering the Tube Jig courses. We have checklists in our blogs. We have our podcast. We have tons of free information out there. We also have our courses that are 99 cents and $4.99 that you can check out too, about mastering the tube jig and tube jig essentials. And then lastly, these are live on our website now, so you can go to gsofishing.com, go to our tackle store, and it will be the very first product that you see in our tackle store. So if you have any specific questions about these tubes, DM us, ask us. We are happy to help. It is not like every man for himself. We want to help you be successful with these products. We are not just pushing products. We want you to use them and not just be like, oh, I got these tubes, I haven't used them, I don't know what to do. Always, always, always ask. You can always DM us. You can call Andy, ask questions. We want you to use them successfully.
Yep. So like any like precision tool that you get into, everything is there and built on purpose. And sometimes with very specific tools, they require a little bit of training to understand how to use them super properly. So if there's ever questions on how to do it, what size, what do we need to, like, where do you start, how do you, any of that stuff, definitely let us know, because we want you guys to be successful with this stuff and not just get it just because it's cool. Because like I say, everything has a purpose, and when you use this stuff right, it can help you catch more fish, which at the end of the day is like all of our goals.
Yeah. And a huge shout out to Matt and Reed at Send It. You guys crushed it. You tried so hard. You did amazing. Thank you so much for making this idea a reality. And as Matt said, they are not on the Send It website. They are on GSO's website. So gsofishing.com is where you can find them. And I can't wait to come up with more collaborations and do more of these videos to really talk about how to use the products. So thank you guys.
All right. Have a good night, and thanks for joining us.